Hey guys, welcome to Module A. We're going to talk about the nurse aide. All right, your objectives for this module is going to be to describe the nurse aide in North Carolina. We're going to talk about resources available to the nurse aide, requirements for being listed on the Nurse Aide 1 registry and the renewal process, the Nurse Aide 1's role in delegation of tasks by a licensed nurse, types of tasks you can perform as a nurse aide. We will compare basic nursing skills, personal care skills, and interpersonal skills. We'll talk about important characteristics of a competent caring nurse aide and the difference between an effective and an ineffective team. All right, so follow along in your book. You'll see that they define the Nurse Aide 1 in the state of North Carolina as an essential unlicensed member of the healthcare team. They're responsible for providing delegated nursing tasks within a defined range of functions for residents in a variety of settings. And they will be listed on the Nurse Aide 1 registry. And you may hear them being called CNA or nursing assistant. That's also common by the public and employers. But what that means is that they assume that you have passed your state-approved nurse training program, your competency test, and that you've been listed on the Nurse Aide 1 registry. All right, let's talk about OBRA. This is the Omnibus Reconciliation Act, and you will see this several times throughout this course. This is a federal law enacted by Congress in 1987. The purpose was to improve the quality of life for residents who live in a nursing home. One part of OBRA defines requirements for your nurse aide training and your competency evaluations in the nurse aide registry. So this course and our instructors are here because of OBRA. All right, range of functions for the nurse aide. The North Carolina Board of Nursing is responsible for defining a range of functions for North Carolina nurse aides. Here is the sheet that defines your task list. You have personal care, body mechanics, nutrition, elimination, safety, and special procedures. And this can be found at the North Carolina Board of Nursing website. Type in NA1 tasks for training programs. And you'll see it just goes over some of the things that, the things that we're going to learn in this course. Down here at the bottom, it will talk about criteria for delegation, which we'll go over later. But do take a look at this. Nurses can delegate other tasks that fall within a range of functions for nurse aides if those tasks meet specific criteria before the delegation of that task occurs. All right, let's talk about the North Carolina Nurse Aide 1 registry. This is a registry of all individuals who meet state and federal training and testing requirements to perform these Nurse Aide 1 tasks in the state of North Carolina. The North Carolina Healthcare Personnel Education and Credentialing is a section of the North Carolina government that provides services for unlicensed healthcare workers, their employees, and instructors. It maintains the North Carolina Nurse Aide 1 registry, and it approves nurse aide training programs. Next, we will talk about the North Carolina Healthcare Personnel Registry. This is a listing of unlicensed healthcare personnel who are being investigated for or who have substantiated findings for any of the following that you've got listed here. So resident neglect, resident abuse, misappropriation of resident property or the healthcare facility, diversion of drugs belonging to the resident or healthcare facility, or fraud against the resident or healthcare facility. Employers in many healthcare settings are required to check the healthcare personnel registry for these allegations or substantiated findings before hiring employees. And according to federal regulations, a nurse aide that is listed on the Nurse Aide 1 registry with a substantiated finding of abuse, neglect, or misappropriation of property cannot be employed in a nursing home. So the Nurse Aide 1 does not want to be listed on this. All right. Let's talk about the registry listing requirements. Requirements for becoming a Nurse Aide 1 and working. So you must complete a state-approved Nurse Aide 1 training program, which is what you're taking now. And then you have to pass the National Nurse Aide Assessment Program. That program is a test that includes a computer-based test using multiple choice questions and a demonstration of 5 randomly selected skills. That initial listing period starts the day you successfully complete your state-approved Nurse Aid 1 competency test, and it ends or expires on the last day of the 24th consecutive month. You can take that NNAAP test up to 3 times after you've completed your state-approved training program before you have to retrain. All right, let's talk about your renewals. An individual's listing on the registry is renewed through qualified work experience completed every 24 months. So qualified work experience is going to be working a minimum of 8 hours during the 24-month listing period. You must receive payment for that work experience. It cannot be volunteer work or working for a family member. You must perform nursing or nursing-related services and be supervised by a registered nurse. Scroll down a little bit so you can see that. Supervised by a registered nurse. The registry listing for any nurse aide who does not work an 8 hours for pay while being supervised by an RN during that 24-month listing period will expire. And before you can continue to work as a nurse aide, that individual will have to take and pass a state-approved training program and retake and pass the state competency test before they can be relisted. At renewal, the new listing period starts on the last date worked as a nurse aide, performing those nursing or nurse-related duties reported by the registered nurse on an employment verification form, and it will end or expire on the last day of the 24th consecutive month. There is an online renewal form, and the website is there for you to see. They do not accept paper forms. It is the responsibility of the nurse aide to know when their listing expires and how to renew it. And you can check your listing expiration date. You can type in Verify Nurse Aid 1 listing, and it will Google will show you the website. The nurse aide and nurse supervisor must complete and sign the forms online. So there are 2 forms that have to be done for this. The Nurse Aid 1 online renewal form, which the nurse aide will complete, and then the Nurse Aid 1 online employment verification form, which the RN will complete. You should submit your renewal listing about 3 months before the date of expiration, before your registry expires. Your responsibilities during all of this is going to be to keep up with your renewal date, which is the date you pass the competency test, and it's used to initially list you on the registry. You can verify that at ncnar.ncdhhs.gov. At renewal, the new listing period starts on the last day worked as a nurse aide, performing those nursing or nurse-related duties reported by the registered nurse on the employment verification form. The 2-year renewal period ends or expires on the last day of the 24th consecutive month. For example, if your initial registry listing date is 10/22/2024, then your 2-year renewal date is going to be 10/30/2026. You need to remember to submit your renewal listing about 3 months before the date your listing expires. And if you're like me, you're just going to put it in your phone calendar with a 3-month reminder, but however you need to do that to remember to renew. And then you also need to promptly report changes in your name, address, and email to the registry. Again, a nurse aide cannot work as a Nurse Aid 1 once their listing on the Nurse Aid 1 registry expires. All right, let's move on to job responsibilities of the nurse aide. Nurse aides perform delegated basic nursing skills in a competent, caring manner. They perform personal care skills, and they use appropriate interpersonal skills to understand, communicate, and interact and relate with other people. All right. Delegation occurs when a licensed nurse asks the nurse aide to take responsibility for performing a task. For example, she asks you to get a set of vital signs. The nurse aide must be able to do that task safely and accurately. Nurses use delegation of tasks and legal regulations to assign duties and tasks to others on the healthcare team. Delegation improves efficiency and shows trust in others. Remember, the nurse is still accountable. All right, basic nursing skills. These are essential skills required of the nurse aide to deliver competent care to residents in the healthcare setting. Some examples are going to be taking and recording vital signs, caring for the resident's environment, recognizing abnormal changes in a resident and reporting those changes, and then caring for the resident when death is imminent. Privacy is going to be key when you provide these basic nursing tasks. These are important for all patients. It follows an interdisciplinary care plan, and it follows directives from supervisors, and reporting important findings are critical to the well-being of your resident. Next, you have personal care skills. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's tasks that deal with the person's body appearance and hygiene. Privacy, again, is going to be key when you provide these skills. They are done daily, in the morning, evening, and at the time the resident prefers care. Just like us, we all have our preferences. We like what we like. We try to accommodate that when we can. Each individual does have things like their own bath soaps, their own bath time, hairstyles, things like that. So we're going to assist them with those things. Hygiene and grooming. Hygiene is performed to keep the body clean and healthy. This is going to be things like bathing and brushing your teeth. Grooming are tasks that maintain appearance while fostering dignity and choice. Examples of that would be caring for fingernails and hair. And these are activities of daily living, or ADLs is what you'll hear them called. This is hygiene and grooming plus dressing, eating, transferring, and toileting. It's just everyday things that a resident routinely does. And it's an important duty of the nurse aide. When you provide your personal care, you're going to encourage that resident to be as independent as possible. Ask them to do as much as they can for themselves. The resident may feel embarrassed for accepting help with personal care skills, so you should be professional and provide privacy during all care. When you assist with personal care skills, you observe the resident's skin, mobility, comfort, and cognition. We're always looking at the resident when we're doing these things, observing. All right, the last type of skills we're talking about is interpersonal skills. These are skills that are determined by standards and values, culture and environment, heredity, interests, and feelings. It's what we use when we work with others. It's how we get along with others while still getting the job done. Why is it important? Well, if you are a nurse aide, you're going to be interacting with a variety of people while you're on duty. It's important to understand how your actions and attitudes can impact those around you, including residents, family members, and coworkers. Use of appropriate interpersonal skills is essential for success. All right. When you care for your resident, you should empathize, and that means to view things or events as the resident views them, anticipate their needs, treat them as a unique individual, honor their requests when possible. We are human. It is not one size fits all. Everyone has different needs and requests. Display patience and tolerance when trying to understand their behavior, and be sensitive to residents' moods. Also be mindful of your own reaction to their mood. Be respectful to family. Listen well so you can understand their concerns. Maintain that open, positive professional relationship with each member of the healthcare team, and effectively communicate to work well with others. All right, let's talk about the qualities, important qualities of a nurse aide as an employee. A nurse aide must act, behave, and function in a professional manner while at work. They must demonstrate an excellent work ethic because of the importance of the position. A work ethic is a personal set of values that determines how an employee approaches their work. In other words, a work ethic is the behavior in the workplace. It includes appearance, communication skills, how you treat others, your attitude, and teamwork. So try to think about what behaviors does a nurse aide with a good work ethic demonstrate when they're at work. What do you see when a nurse aide has good work ethic? What do they do at work? How do they have a good work ethic? You may think about their appearance, how they communicate with others, how they treat others, residents, family, co-workers. Think about their attitude, how they work with other team members. All right. We have to talk about personal appearance in the job. So it's going to be a professional appearance. You want to follow your facility dress code for uniform and jewelry. Dress neatly, modest, clean uniform without tears and wrinkles. Have your badge visible. Clean, non-skid, closed-toed, comfortable shoes that fit well and offer support. Clean undergarments in the appropriate color and style, and keep in mind that bright colored and patterned undergarments can show through light colored clothing. Maintain excellent personal hygiene. Maintain neatly trimmed, short, natural, clean nails without polish. That is an infection control issue and very important when you're working in healthcare. Simple hairstyle, pulling long hair back away from the face. You don't want your hair to be falling in your face or onto your resident or into the area that you're working. Maintain excellent hygiene. Bathe daily. Be free of odor. Light with the cologne, perfume, and aftershave. Remember, you're going to be assisting people with personal hygiene, so it's important that you have good hygiene. Follow your policies on jewelry for facial jewelry, eyebrows, nose, lips, and tongue. Typically, at most, wear a single pair of stud earrings. Avoid heavy makeup and keep a warm, friendly smile. All right. Keep in mind, it takes about 15 seconds to make a first impression. So that's how important a person's physical appearance is. First impressions are important, whether you're meeting the resident for the first time or going to a job interview. Looking and feeling good about yourself includes self-confidence, which increases the likelihood that the resident will be confident in you as a healthcare provider. Now let's talk about the nurse aide attitude at work. A nurse aide should exhibit patience and understanding, honest and trustworthiness, conscientiousness, and trying to do their absolute best. They should be enthusiastic and enjoy the job, be courteous, considerate and respectful, cheerful. They should care about others. They should be dependable and responsible, accountable and willing to admit to their mistakes, tolerant of others and keep opinions to themselves. Be self-aware. That one's a struggle for a lot of people. You have to do some self-searching and figure those things out about yourself. Care for people equally well, no matter their race, age, sex, religion, or sexual orientation. Care about others and what they are going through. All right, the mission of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services is that they, in collaboration with their partners, provide essential services to improve the health, safety, and well-being of all North Carolinians. And the vision is that they advance innovation solutions that foster independence, improve health, and promote the well-being of all North Carolinians. The role of the Nurse Aide 1 in healthcare is to improve the health and promote the safety and well-being of the individuals in their care. Let's talk a little bit more. Here's the mission and vision. Let's talk about the role of the nurse aide as an employee. You should understand the requirements of being a nurse aide in North Carolina and maintain a current listing on the Nurse Aide 1 registry. Know what you are legally allowed to do. Remember that scope of practice and task list. Have concern for others and help make their lives happier and more complete, whether it be residents, family, or coworkers. Encourage residents to do all they can for themselves. Maintain excellent appearance, grooming, and hygiene while at work. As far as your work day goes, report on time and when you're scheduled. Use your sick time for sick time. Perform an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Show respect to boss and supervisors. Don't join in with criticizing. Perform tasks delegated by your nurse. Next slide. Be gentle and kind to residents, families, and coworkers. Be able to put yourself in other people's shoes and attempt to understand that person. That's called empathy. Be pleasant, not moody, bad-tempered, or sad while at work. Respect others and their possessions. Always do your best. Never be afraid to ask when you do not know an answer or know how to do something. You should treat others with dignity. Be a team player and help others when you are asked and when you have downtime. Be careful and alert to your surroundings at work and to resident cues. Be eager and excited about going to work. Next slide. Refrain from gossiping. Be above suspicion with what you say. Speak honestly and with kindness. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and caring. And you can see that's paraphrased from the 4 agreements. All right. Do not lie, cheat, or steal. Always look for the good in others. Take the opportunity to praise others when the chance arises. That's not something we generally do a lot of. We're quick to talk about things that are bad, but we don't typically take the opportunity to praise others. Don't use profanity or tell offensive jokes. And this side says, listen to your conscience. If you are unsure what you are about to do is right, don't do it. It's your conscience talking. All right. So think about the qualities that we just listed and think about how you match up with personal and professional qualities of the nurse aide as an employee. What qualities are important to have when you care for a resident in a long-term care facility? All right, let's move on to teams. A team is a group of people with a common purpose, assigned task, and a coordinated effort to get the job done. Your book uses an example of a baseball team, and it asks a couple of questions about that. So what makes the players a team? It could be interest in game, that they practice together over time, common goals. What are important qualities of the coach? Things like coordinating schedules, listening to the team members, providing overall vision. What is important about team members who sit on the bench? They provide backup and team spirit. What might need to change when the pitcher is sick? Well, other people may have to have flexibility in their roles. And then what happens when the first baseman only attends half of the practices? And so that can be a variety of things. People may assume that that first baseman doesn't want to be a part of the team. You may ask the team member if something else is going on. Listen, don't judge. Increase positive interactions with that team member. So it's just going over a team, what that means, what that looks like, and then things that can help when you're working with a team is understanding you have common interests and goals, recognition of player strengths and weaknesses, understanding other team members' roles, promoting confidence in other members, showing flexibility in the roles, mechanisms for conflict resolutions, and supporting each other. So the definition of a team is a group that works together and functions as a whole. They communicate with each other, coordinate their work activities, share their responsibilities, receive assignments to ensure that each team member knows what to do, what is expected, and how to plan work schedules. The nurse aide is a member of the healthcare team. And there's your definition there. Let's talk about qualities of an effective team. You may have actually been on a team that you felt was very effective. The climate in this type of team is going to be more informal and comfortable, relaxed. The members are interested and involved. Communication is open and two-way. Ideas and feelings are encouraged. The interactions are inclusive and trusting. The people tend to like each other and like working with each other. Goals and tasks are appropriate, understood, and modified so that it gets the work done. It's really hard to get a goal completed when you don't fully understand what's expected of you, so that's an important part of this. Your leaders lead and members participate in a respectful and cooperative manner. Everyone pulls together. There's a high level of inclusion, trust, and support, and problem solving is high. So when a problem arises, the people consult with appropriate resources and work to resolve that problem. So thinking about an effective team versus ineffective team, let's talk about, your book has a section that talks about the consequences of being late or a no-call, no-show to work. A no-call, no-show means an employee did not show up for a scheduled shift and did not call and notify this facility about the absence. So I just want you to think about what might be the result if you, the nurse aide, are late for work or if you do not show up for work one day without letting anyone know. There, you can think about what would happen with your patients, with other staff members, with you as far as consequences. A lot of times consequences will follow an offense, first, second, and third offense, where first offense would be written warning, second offense would be a suspension or mandatory meetings, and third offense or no-call, no-shows would be a termination letter. So there's a lot that can happen when you are a team and you're missing one of your key players. Now let's talk about an ineffective team. I'm sure we've all been on an ineffective team before as well. The climate with an ineffective team is typically tense. Communication is closed in one way. Ideas and feelings are discouraged. Members may be hesitant to speak up. The interactions are based on authority only, so people with more power dominate and may look down on people they feel are unequal or undeserving of their time. The goals may be unclear, misunderstood, or forced, which can result in not getting the job done. The highest authority does the decision-making with minimal group involvement. There can be distrust among the members, and members may be forced to conform. Disagreement and conflict are ignored or denied, may be suppressed. People generally don't get along as well. Problem solving is low, criticism is destructive, and members may feel attacked. The job does not get done. All right, so group commitment. With strong group commitment, you'll feel a strong sense of belonging, enjoy being with each other, ask each other for advice, seek and provide support in times of difficulty, value each other and the contributions that each person makes, be motivated and want to do a good job, share good feelings openly, and feel the goals of the group are important and achievable. All right, you do have a page in your book, and it talks about teams, and it says to read the conversations overheard in the healthcare setting, decide whether the member of an effective or ineffective team is talking. So essentially all you're going to do is read these sentences and decide if they are effective or ineffective. And you may have to turn this into your instructor, so I will not go over all of that, but do look at that and fill it out, and check your answers against your instructor or another student, to make sure that we are able to speak in an effective, communicative manner. All right, I just want to reiterate again for this section your task list here. Again, that's ncbon.com. The next sheet is the nurse aid renewal form. You can come to this page to fill that out to do your renewal, and that's NCNAR forms. This is how you verify a registry listing. When you apply for a job, they're going to come over here and they're going to put this information. It's going to bring your name up and show if you have anything against your registry. And the last thing I want to show you is this decision tree for delegation for a nurse aide, essentially. And what I want to show you here is that the nurse isn't responsible for delegating, but you need to know your role in delegation as well. And so when she delegates or he delegates something to you, it has to meet the following criteria, and you can see here. Frequently recurs in the daily care of a client, is performed according to an established sequence of steps. And when we do our skills, you'll notice that we do have an established sequence of steps. Involves little to no modification from one client situation to another, may be performed with a predictable outcome, does not inherently involve ongoing assessment, interpretation, or decision making, and does not endanger the client's life or well-being. So there's a tree to follow that the nurse will know if she can delegate or not, but it is important for you to understand your role, your scope of practice, and how delegation works. All right, and that will conclude Module A.